this video is not just a shopping list. Instead, I'm going to be sharing 5 kinds of tarot books and the different roles they play in deepening my tarot practice. If the only books you own are keyword guides, then I think you're missing out on so much of what you could be doing with your deck and what it could be teaching you. Today, I want to share 5 different functions that a good tarot book might serve because they each meet different needs in my practice. I'm going to be talking about reference guides, books that expand what tarot can mean, a book that adds layers of meaning, something to add a twist to the tarot, and a book that inspires you to use your deck in new ways. Let's get into it. So first up are what I'm calling the anchor texts, or basically your reference books. Go-to interpretive foundation for the so-called default or traditional meanings. These might not feel essential for more advanced readers, but I think they're still very grounding. And in my practice, this looks like a Rider-Waite-Smith book, what the cards are supposed to mean that you can refer to and riff off of. And this, in my mind, in my current practice, is actually the least essential kind of book because the internet exists, but I do love having a physical book to refer to as well. So the examples that I have here are, first of all, 78 Degrees of Wisdom by Rachel Pollack, which is a Bible. It's a classic. I actually have not read this one cover to cover, but I have dipped in and out of it. This is one that I feel like I need to read because, like I say, it is a classic. But my version of this in my practice is actually this. It's The Ultimate Guide to Tarot by Liz Dean. And this is the first book that I had, the book that I learned my Rider-Waite-Smith from. And this has sort of just like all your basic meanings. It's got what's going on in the card, things like the astrology, the Kabbalah, if you refer to those things, upright, reverse, meaning, the messages, the symbols in the card. This book in particular also has a spread for every single one of the major arcana. And then for the minor arcana, we've still got the kind of basic Golden Dawn information, the astrological associations, and then what's going on in the card, what it means upright, what it means reversed. I haven't referred to this in a really long time because I have what I consider to be the like basic meanings down. I have my own notes that I refer to at this point, or just my sort of memory, my knowledge of the cards. But it's definitely a beginner essential, and I do enjoy having physical copies to refer back to as and when I feel like I need to. Caveat for this category of tarot book is that this obviously is aimed at a Rider-Waite-Smith reader. I am primarily a Rider-Waite-Smith reader, but I think if you're looking for a book in each of these 5 categories, the way I've broken it down, there's no reason you couldn't sub in like a Marseille book, a Thoth book, etc. Obligatory disclaimer that I'm not so familiar with those systems, but I don't see why that wouldn't work. So we've got our Rider-Waite-Smith basic reference anchor texts, and next up is what I have termed reframing texts. And these are books that update or reinterpret the tarot through, in these cases, a different philosophical or ethical lens, different worldview. I don't necessarily see these as a replacement for a kind of basic reference guide because I think knowing the foundations of the system is important, but these kinds of books are so fantastic for broadening your perspective, and in my practice, they have been where I've been able to connect better with the cards, build those like personal associations and personalize the meanings for myself. So the 2 books that I have here are Radical Tarot by Charlie Claire Burgess that I talk about all the time. You can see mine is tabbed and highlighted, and I've got notes and marginalia and all sorts going on in here. It's like an A to Z of tarot. It's a Tarot 101. It's a big tarot guidebook, but it is a guidebook through a particular lens of queering the tarot, of tarot beyond the binary. It has that particular frame of reference, that perspective on it. And then Red Tarot, a decolonial guide to divinatory literacy, which is again essentially a tarot guidebook. This one is organized numerologically, which I personally really enjoy. I'm doing a lot of numerology stuff at the moment with Marseille for May. And again, it is a guide to the tarot, but through this decolonial lens. I haven't read this one cover to cover like I've read Radical Tarot cover to cover, but I have been kind of dipping in and out of it as I've been doing readings. I've been reading the entries for the cards that I've pulled, and I really enjoy the perspective on it. I think also having it set up numerologically also adds a bit of a different perspective on it, because instead of going through it elementally, suit by suit, you're going through it numerologically and essentially reorganizing the structure of the tarot for the purposes of this book. Helps you connect different dots, something I really enjoy. So these are my two examples of reframing texts. And then next up is layers of meaning. So by this, I mean books that focus on particular layers within the structure of the tarot, like how I was just saying that Red Tarot organizes the tarot structure numerologically. And so while it's not a book about numerology and tarot, that is the layer of the structure of tarot that it's been organized by. And then these books, these layers of meaning, take that a step further, and that is the focus of the text. So here, this is my sort of personal favorite in this category. This is tarot and astrology. And I know I've talked about this before on the channel. You can see I've got Five of Pentacles tabbed here because I was reading this when I did my decks for Taurus season video, and this has organized the 78 cards by the astrological associations. So we've got the decans here, and then in the majors it looks at planetary rulership and sign rulership of the cards, and that is the lens through which it's viewing the tarot. It is specifically focusing on that astrological layer of the tarot rather than a broad overview 101 kind of a book. I feel like this is another example of what I mean here. So this is Your Tarot Court by Ethany Dawn. And so this book focuses on just the 16 court cards of the tarot and looks at them as archetypes, looks at the astrology of each of the court cards, how you might personify that archetype, the shadow side, and then there's some pop culture stuff in this book as well. So it really is magnifying that layer of the tarot, the court card layer of the tarot, if you will. So those are my layers of meaning books. I know there are also books out there that look at numerology, other astrology books, Kabbalah, which is not something I work with, color theory, myths, folklore, deities. Like, pick your poison. Don't be appropriative, but pick your poison. There's definitely so many texts out there. Instead of trying to do the Tarot 101, only tarot book you'll ever need, covers everything but really thinly, this goes much deeper into particular aspects of the 78 cards of the tarot, and I really enjoy that. I really enjoy getting a bit nerdy, getting really into the layers. It's something that has really helped my personal learning of the tarot and understanding of each of the cards, and being able to remember what each of the cards mean when they come up in a reading, because I have all these other footholds to grab onto. It's one of my favorite things about the tarot, is looking at the structure of the tarot, of the framework, of breaking it down, of restructuring it, of looking at it from different angles. So these kind of deep dive books, sort of narrow but deep, I really love them so much. So those three categories in my mind are about learning what the cards mean. And then my next two categories of tarot book are about the act or the art of reading the cards and playing with the cards. So the next couple of books I have are examples of what I consider a fresh perspective on the tarot. They are not so much about interpreting the individual cards as they are about doing a reading. The goal of these books, I suppose, is in changing how you read, or at least examining how you read, rather than what the cards mean. I hope I'm explaining that. They shift from theory into practice. There we go. These books over here, the first three categories, my anchor texts, my reframing, and my layers of meaning books, those are kind of tarot theory. They are what the cards mean, mainly what other people have said that the cards mean. And then these books, these fresh perspective books, are about the practice of reading and what you individually are actually going to get out of a tarot reading. And I also think this is where some really cool, innovative stuff comes in. So I've got two books here. This is The Neuroscience of Tarot by Siddharth Ramakrishnan. And this I have talked about a fair bit at the beginning of the year. It was a book I was reading with my Patreon book club in January and February. I loved this. Something these books both have in common is that they are packed with different exercises, different journal exercises, exercises in reading the tarot in a new way. And the neuroscience of tarot is full of sciencey stuff, is full of the science of what actually happens in our brains when we are using our intuition, what that actually means kind of neurologically, neuro forecasting, and how it all works in the brain. Basically, the science behind what's going on in our heads when we perform a reading. Right up my street. I love me a science. I love me a scientific explanation of something. And then this New Directions in Tarot by Scott Martin was an examination of Pamela Coleman Smith's artwork. So again, this is very Rider-Waite-Smith heavy, where it's something like the neuroscience of tarot that applies no matter what deck you're using, no matter what divination system you're using even. Whereas this is looking at the artwork in Pixie's artwork in the Rider-Waite-Smith as if they were scenes from a stage play and reading them as if they are scenes from a stage play. So stage left, stage right mean certain things. The importance of a character in a scene can be read through whether they're like at the front of the stage, whether they're towards the back, that sort of thing. This also had absolutely loads of exercises all through it. You can see I've got post-it notes and notes all through both of these. And they really do give a fresh perspective, not on the cards themselves specifically, but on the act of reading, on the practice of reading. And I have gotten so much value out of both of these and other books like these because they have really encouraged me to try new things in my practice or go about my practice a different way. And I find that really valuable. The final category of tarot book that I want to talk about today is just playtime. These are the most fun. This is ways to play with the tarot and ways to use the tarot not just as a tool for reading, but as a whole like Swiss Army knife style, all the bells and whistles, multi-tool, loads of ways to read the cards or use the cards that isn't just doing a reading. And this kind of activity, this is where I get a lot of joy in my practice personally, in playing with the tarot and trying out different ways to use it and to use the cards. By the way, this kind of thing is a lot of what we get up to over on Patreon, especially in the Tarot Lab. We're all about experimenting and reframing and remixing the tarot. So do come join us if you're interested. There's a link in the description. As for the books I have in front of me, these books are prompt based. They are interactive. They encourage creativity in your practice. And I see these books as companionable rather than instructional. For the most part, they don't really focus on what the cards mean. So let me actually tell you what I've got here. This is Tarot for the Hard Work by Maria Minnis, and this uses the major arcana of the tarot as a inspiration, jumping off point for anti-racist work. Essentially, it's a workbook inspired by the major arcana, using those archetypes that we're all very familiar with to do the hard work. So for instance, the Hierophant, it's looking at the archetype of each card, how that archetype can show up in liberation work, correspondences for that card, the archetype, how that archetype shows up balanced and imbalanced, using each of these cards as inspiration to talk about adjacent work, adjacent topics, like here with the Hierophant, remaining committed around problematic family, exercises, affirmations, building a toolkit inspired by that card. So this whole book combined is a really comprehensive toolkit and workbook that is inspired by the tarot, inspired by those archetypes we're familiar with. I love this kind of book. So when I said playtime, this particular book is less easy breezy fun playtime, but it is taking the archetypes that we're really familiar with and using them as inspiration for something outside of tarot. Spread books, I think, are also a really good example of this kind of like playtime type of book with tarot. I include spread books here because they are often based on a particular theme, and in my own practice, they're what I reach for when I want to pull some cards, but I don't have anything in particular that I feel like I want to read about. And so reading with somebody else's spread, a spread that already exists, feels more like an exercise in tarot rather than trying to answer a question. So this here is Tarot for Creativity by Chelsea Pippin Lizzie. it has a spread for every single card. This book in particular does have a bit of a, not exactly an explanation of the card. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this as a tarot guidebook. It's more doing that fresh perspective thing where we're looking at the entire deck of cards through this lens of creativity and creative practice. And then it also has exercises, prompts for each of the cards, and a spread for each of the cards. So there are more than 78 spreads actually, because there's a whole additional section of spreads at the back, as well as loads of creative prompts. So again, it is using the structure of the tarot as a jumping off point for other kinds of practice. And then finally, I recently received this. This is Drea Bloom's newest book. So I have flicked through it and started kind of getting a feel for it, but I have not, I mean, look at it. She's a hefty book. I have certainly not read it in its entirety, but Drea Bloom's books are brilliant for this kind of playtime tarot book because they are full of a lot of therapeutic exercises, journaling exercises. She's got like a couple of artsy craftsy activity books out there, all of which are inspired by the tarot and involve using your cards, but not just for doing a reading, doing a spread, answering questions. So this, like I say, is her latest book, Tarot for the Soul, a collection of therapeutic activities using the tarot cards as part of those activities, as inspiration. I think it's a really good example of what you can do with the tarot, and is one of the things I love so much about the tarot, because it is a set structure. We've got those like basic 101 texts that we can refer back to, because for better or worse, there is a set structure and set meanings. And then we can continue to expand those, redefine those for ourselves, and use them for all kinds of exercises and activities and areas of our practice. And that was 5 kinds of tarot book that I would recommend you have in your collection. To quickly recap, I have shared 5 categories of tarot book. If I were giving recommendations, I would recommend you get a basic reference to ground your practice that you can refer back to, a book that reframes that basic reference, maybe updates it, is more suited to your personal worldview, a book that dives into a particular system, a particular layer of the tarot to add in deeper meaning when you're doing readings, a book that remixes the tarot and plays with it and gives you new ways to look at the tarot, and then a book that lets you play and take tarot beyond just a tarot reading and as a tool that you can use for all sorts of different things. These, of course, are not rigid categories. Like I say, if I'm giving recommendations, these are the recommendations I would give. But as you can probably tell from the kinds of books I've shown you, I'm not so interested in predictive readings or getting concrete or rigid answers. I am more interested in the kind of psychological exploration, fun playing side of tarot. So the most important thing is always going to be knowing what you want to get out of your practice and finding books to fit. If you're new to tarot, hi, you're going to have so much fun. Don't buy 5 books. Don't buy 5 books all at once. It's overwhelming. 78 cards is already a lot. Honestly, the internet exists for your basic traditional reference guide. If you're a brand new reader, I would honestly just recommend you get Radical Tarot. Beyond that, what do you think is missing from your practice? Find a book to fill one of those gaps. The kind of book that fits each of these categories for you are going to depend on your values, on your background, how you engage with tarot, what you're looking to get out of it. Knowing what you're looking for is always going to help you choose more intentionally than just whatever book people recommend the most. But that probably doesn't need saying. So I am going to leave you here. Tell me, what kinds of tarot books have had the biggest impact on your reading style? Are there any categories you think that I missed? Or is there any categories that you'd add for your own library and for your own style of practice? Recommend me some books. I know I just said you don't need to buy a million books, but I want to. So let me know your favorites. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for spending some time with me. Please do check out my Patreon if you also like to remix your practice. I think you will enjoy it over there. We'd love to have you. Give me a like if you liked it. Give this video a like if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my Etsy for readings and my tarot spread zines. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.